Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 6 of Going the Distance. I'm Nicholas Delgado, and I'm your host for everything to do with high school running in Central Illinois. Make sure to follow on Instagram and other socials at Going the Distance IL and tune in every Wednesday for a new episode. Also, check out our new website at www.goingthedistance.co. Today's episode will be a shorter one, pretty normal, but we have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. We're going to be doing basically the same format. We're going to be going over last week's meets. We're going to talk about next week's upcoming meets, and we're going to do our conference corner segment. No interviews today, but I have a big one lined up for next week, so make sure to check in next Wednesday for episode 7. Let's start it off with our weekly recap. We had the Dunlap invite this past weekend. Lots of local teams there. Eureka comes away with the win in 53 points over Chatham Glenwood with 60 points. Morton comes in third with 87 points, and Dunlap's right behind them with 88 points. Now, Morton did not run their top 4 varsity guys, and they still placed third. So, props to them. Great races by their 5 through 9. Yes, sorry. Individually, though, Van Schneider, the sophomore of Chatham Glenwood, wins the race in 15:29.8, breaking 15:30 for the first time over Andrew Perry, the senior of Eureka, in 15:48.2. The Richard Spring invite at Detweiler Park was also this weekend. Arlington Heights Hersey comes away with the win with 127 points over Oak Park River Forest with 135 points. O'Fallon not too far behind at 141 points, so pretty close race up there at the top. If you don't know Richard Spring, they race all classes together. It's just all 60, 70 teams, I think. Just how many there were there? Just all in one race. There's even like 5 teams from out of state, too, so it's a big race. Lots of fast times. It's great weather this weekend. So individually, we have Dylan Nally, the senior of Marion. I'm sure you've heard his name a lot already in this podcast and maybe elsewhere, but you should really hear his name now. 14 flat, 0.2. That's the winning time. He was so close to breaking 14, but he will be back at the end, very last day of September at the Peoria High Invite to try to take that back. He opened, I think, at like a 4:29. Crazy time. Congrats to him, but I know he's probably feeling that last 0.2 seconds, so we'll see what he can cut down within the next 2 weeks. He wins over Dylan Ybarra, the senior of O'Fallon, in 14:20.7, who also had a great race. Just Dylan Nally, just putting up some really impressive times. Not on Saturday, we had the the normal intercity cross-country meet. I want to say it was Monday. It could have been today. No, it was Monday. U-High comes away with the win in 20 points over Normal Community with 46 points. Fairly dominant win for U-High. They went 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they really stacked the top right there. They're looking to be a really solid team in the area and even in the whole state for 2A. But individually, Joey Yaros, the junior of Normal Community, wins at 15:58.43 over Landon Alcorn, the senior of U-High, in 16:04.99. So Joey Yaros, the only thing standing in the way of a normal U-High sweep. Finally, not a local meet, but the Larry Eddington invite at Maple Park Caneland. Downers Grove North comes away with the win in 53 points over Lyle Bennett Academy in 96 points. And Glenbard West trails right behind them at 105 points. The senior from Downers Grove North, Ryan Eddington, wins the race in 14 minutes, 48.9 seconds over Evan Nosik, the junior of Maple Park Canland, in 14 minutes, 57.2 seconds. So 2 sub-15 times right there on not a Detweiler course. Now, I don't know what that course is like, but very, very great times. I think for Nosik, that was a 0.6 second PR, so I think it compares fairly similarly to Detweiler. So great racing by everybody there, but especially congrats to those two guys. Some individual performances from this week. Weekly top times for the whole state. For 1A, it was Elijah Teefy, the sophomore from Pleasant Plains, in 15:21.5. He set this at the Richard Spring Invitational. Dale Nally, obviously, with his 14:5.2. The senior from Marion sets this at the Richard Spring Invite and once again has another 2A top time. And finally, for the 3A top time of the week, Dylan Ybarra, the senior of O'Fallon, also sets his 14:20.7 at the Richard Spring Invitational on this past Saturday. This is not the first time we've seen his name either, so we can see we have two very strong runners in their respective classes. and we'll see how they can perform as we hunker down and approach the postseason coming up. Not too soon, but it'll come faster than I think a lot of people think. It's kind of rolling up on us. The season's gone by really fast so far. So, but actually, 2 of those times take the season top times for the classes. 1A stays the same. Jackson Barrett, the senior from Tuscola, keeps his first to the finish time of 14:59.5 for 1A. But Dylan Nally's 14:02 breaks his own record for 2A. And Dylan Ibarra's 14:20.7 breaks Camille Vigé's 14:23 for the 3A top time for the season. Runner of the week. It was really hard to choose this week, but locally I chose the senior Andrew Elward from Notre Dame. He had a really solid performance on a stacked field at the Richard Spring Invite. It was the second time under 16 ever, and this time he almost went under 15:30. He ran a 15:31.6. Very impressive time by him. He led his team, and he has huge potential to go low 15s and even possibly sub 15 this year. So, congrats to him. I'd like to see how he cuts down as we approach the postseason conference meets. But overall, great race by him. I know it wasn't necessarily the fastest time in the area this week, but his huge time jump and consistency this year is really putting him as a top runner in the area. So, congrats to Andrew Elward. In the statewide, I chose Dylan Ibarra, the senior from O'Fallon. He placed second at the Richard Spring Invite, 14:20.7. I know we've talked about that. Second in a stacked field, though, that's really impressive. Huge invite. He'd be very solid performers. He was a top 3A performer. It was his first time under 14:30 as well, and very early in the year still, so congrats to him. He helped his team place third place in the competitive meet as well, which is why I chose him over Dylan Nally's 14 flat time. I'm also trying to save him for if he breaks 14 this year. So, because I'm only trying to use everybody once. I do not feel like it would be fair to put Dylan Nally every week. Let's give some other people time in spotlight. But congrats to both of those guys. They performed really well this week. That's why I chose them. We'll see how they continue to progress. But based on what I've seen from both of them this year, I can say pretty confidently that they're going to have a strong postseason as long as no injuries or anything bad happens to them. Moving into the conference quarter, Washington actually closing the gap on Morton in the Middle Illini. Morton still ahead in the simulation with 33 points over Washington's 45, but that is a smaller gap than it has been previously. This may be contributed to the fact that Morton did not run their varsity this last week. Like I said, their top 4 did not run. Dunlap right behind in 92, Pekin 110, Metamora 112. There's a change right there. Pekin launches ahead of Metamora just barely, but they do. Limestone gets enough people to score, and they bounce up on the team rankings with 187 points over East Peoria's 192. Canton still does not have enough people to make a team. However, the Middle Illini is now looking pretty solid this year. Almost all the teams have team score now, and we're looking at a very solid race for the front, especially top 3. You can even see Pekin or Metamora sneaking in the Dunlap, so it's not like Dunlap's safe right there in that third place spot. So we'll have to see how it unfolds as the season progresses. But individually, the senior of Morton, Josh Weeks, still leads the conference in his 15:08.6 over Devin Hayes, the junior of Pekin, in 15:27 flat. Just like last week, Morton has a strong pack, with their top 4 being in the top 7 of the conference. They're going 1, 5, 6, and 7. But like I said, Washington is closing that gap. So head-to-head at this weekend at the East Peoria Invite, which we'll get to soon. That should show us where each team is at and how the runners stack up against each other. Moving on to the HOI conference, Eureka in 29 points leads El Paso Gridley in 43. Deer Creek Mackinac right behind in 95. Tri-Valley in 114. Tremont 139. Hayworth 152. And Monkfield Cressa 169 are all behind. Eureka's doing a fantastic job of holding off El Paso Gridley based on their PRs. Although the gap is closing technically, Eureka's score just keeps dropping as well. They just keep putting all their runners in front of El Paso's runners, so congrats to them. Individually, the senior of El Paso, Dean Witzig, is leading Carson Lehman, the senior of Eureka, 15:30.3 to 15:36.1. So we still have a close individual race, but team-wise, Eureka is continuing to pull away and just drop their times each coming week. So as they progress towards the conference week, we'll see if El Paso can come up with some strategy here and hopefully chop off a couple seconds and make that conference race interesting, because it's not guaranteed yet. Nothing's guaranteed, and anything can happen on any given day. So keep your eyes out on the HOI conference. There should be some interesting developments there very soon. Finally, looking at the Big 12 Conference, Notre Dame, after this week's Richard Spring invite, pulls away from the rest of the Big 12. They dropped their score from 56, tied with Champaign Central, to 38 points. They now lead Normal Community with 62. Champaign Central with 65 is right behind in Normal West at 89. Andrew Elward, the senior of Notre Dame, also leads the conference now in a 1531.6 over Caleb Mathias, the sophomore at Champaign Central, in 1533.6. Huge strides from Notre Dame this week at the Richard Spring invite, and that boosts them into a comfortable first place position. Now let's take a look at the weekly outlook. We have some important meets coming up. Locally, East Peoria invite is going to house most of the local teams. Any of the smaller schools locally are mostly going to the St. Joseph Ogden invite, but that is not one I cover on here. It's a little far away, and it's mostly small schools. But if you don't hear local school on this East Peoria invite, they are probably at St. Joseph Ogden. So we got a pretty even split this week. But at East Peoria, we have Morton, Limestone, Canton, East Peoria, Eureka, Washington. Those are the local ones. But we also have Normal Community, Community West, and U-High all showing up, and Champaign Central as well. So there will be a good race. Morton will see U-High, Morton will see Washington, Morton will see Normal Community, Morton will see Eureka. Kind of got a conference intertwining of conferences here. The big three local conferences will be competing against each other. So who will come out victorious? We will see on Saturday. Stay tuned for next week's results. Shameless plug. Next Wednesday, we will be coming out with another episode, just like usual. Make sure to follow the podcast. Turn on the notifications as well if you don't have them on. It is very important to listen to Going the Distance. This is where you get your number one source of running news. Another important meet coming up, not local, it's the Palatine Meet of Champions, though. This is a huge meet. Although the size is not that big, it is basically every stacked team you can think of. Got Hersey, Chicago Jones, St. Ignatius, Crystal Lake Prairie Ridge, Downers Grove North. All these teams, even if they're not all in the same class, they're just solid teams. Edwardsville coming all the way up, Grays Lake Central, Hinsdale Central even there, Nicola Valley from Naperville, Oak Park Fenwick, Oak Park River Forest. Got some big schools, small schools, public schools, private schools. Palatine obviously is going to be there. Plainfield North and South, looking at some very solid nationally ranked teams and runners. Rockford Christian, smaller school, going to be there, but they should put up a good fight. St. Louis University High School also making the journey way up to Palatine to race. Wheaton Warrenville South, Winnetka New Trier. I mean, that's just 18 of the teams. There are a lot more there, and they're stacked. So that will be a meet to pay attention to this weekend. It's probably some really fast times. I'm not quite sure how that course translates to Detweiler, but there should be some fast times with good competition pushing everybody. We will have to check back in on that next Wednesday. Another meet coming up this next week, the Sterling Rock River Run. Belvedere North, Geneseo, Caneland, Sterling, and Sycamore will all be there. That's one to keep your eyes on. There's always a couple occasionally fast times there. They kind of come out of, I don't want to say nowhere, but like, from what I know about this course, I feel like it's kind of weird. And somebody always ends up running a really great time and then popping off Peoria High. So this is one I wanted to put on the list. Pay attention to this one. It'll be important as we come up into this next week. And then finally, another not local meet, the Harvest Midseason Classic. This is up in Elgin, hosted by Elgin Harvest Christian Academy, which is obviously going to be attending their own meet. And along with them, Aurora Central Catholic and Riverside Brookfield will also be attending this meet, making it a solid meet, just like the rest of them. So that'll round out our episode for today. We have had a lot of information to go through. Keep your eye out on those meets. Athletic.net will post results. Even look at live.athletic.net for live results through Saturday. We talked about the local conferences, local runners, runner of the week, and went over the recap of last week's meets. So thank you for tuning in to Season 3, Episode 6 of Going the Distance. I'm Nicholas Delgado. Make sure to tune back every Wednesday for a new episode. It's my pleasure giving you the number one source of running news each week. We go over all the results, all the statistics, and keep you updated as best as I can. So recommend it to your friends, share it, like it, drop a 5-star rating, subscribe, follow, whatever will boost us. Follow us on social media at Going the Distance IO. Every follow, like, is really appreciated. Anything that can get the name out of this podcast is very important as we are trying to spread the word throughout Central Illinois. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you tuning in to this podcast. Once again, I'm Nicholas Delgado. Check us out at Going the Distance IL, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks for listening.